Hello, we're in Malta and we're going to discuss a drawing by Emvin Cremona, E-M-V-I-N-C-E-R-E-M-O-N-A. This artist has made, in a variety of places around the world, quite notable works, but I don't consider him an international artist really. He is a pretty much Maltese artist. He's a Maltese artist, but most of his work was done in Malta, and the evolution of his work occurred in Malta. And you've got these 20th century Maltese painters like Apap, like Vella, like Cremona, and there are others who inhabited Malta in this end of British era Malta, and their life encompassed quite a heavy dose of Catholic religious art and quite a heavy dose of colonial influence and quite a heavy dose of the modern era changing Malta. So when you think of these artists, think of what the paintings here were like in the 19th century. They're going to be old religious paintings on the whole. Think of what pictures are like now, 2022. Pictures now encompass physical pictures. Modern artwork encompasses digital art, which can be figurative or literal, or combination. Digital art can be moving, video, NFT. So you've got this journey from conventional daubs to where we are now, and this artist is one of the artists who has the pedigree of both the traditional art and the beginnings of this very modern art. So some of his works are futuristic and groundbreaking. Some of his works are based on formulaic, established art, and it's similar to Vella. And there are others. There's a sort of like a Maltese school in this era, and they're not the same, but there's cross-fertilisation, and they're sharing ideas, and they're watching what other people are doing in Malta, and they're watching what other people are doing on the mainland. Not particularly in England, I don't think. So when you look at the name Cremona, it's one of the top names, and the penalty for this fame is that his product, his works, are desperately expensive, and they're not going to get cheaper. They are being pursued in a rabid vortex of collectors and dealers. Most collectors are Maltese, some collectors are English, some collectors are American, and they want this stuff for two reasons. One of the reasons is it gives them pleasure, and the other reason is it's a place to put cash, and it's a form of it's a sort of a reserve currency. You know, within the currency world, the dollar, everyone goes to the dollar as a refuge, but when you talk about paintings, if you're Maltese, you're going to go to these names. And if this sort of work is in the Marsa in Valletta, and is in all the big collections, and is quite well recorded, and the artist is quite well documented and admired and widely accepted and appreciated, you're not chasing your tail and being speculative. You're following quite a well-trodden form of acquisition. This is not a painting. It is a pen and ink on paper. It is quite a thin paper. It is not a tissue paper or a tracing paper, but it is very thin. It's not a piece of card. Obviously it's mounted on a piece of card, but the paper is thin. It is a commercial illustration. It is an advert, and the back says Wimpey Shell, ADV. I suggest that is Wimpey, the construction firm, which still exists, and Shell Oil, which still exists, ADV, advert, designed by JAS. I don't know who JAS is. I've had a quick look, I can't find him. Drawn by Emvin Cremona, it's dated August 58. So one limitation of this is you could say, oh well, he didn't design it. Well, it's true, he didn't design it. But, so he had an idea provided by another person, and he, rather like an engraver, will take a painting and put it onto a plate. Cremona in this instance has converted this idea or draft into a usable, accurately painted drawing. And on the images on the website we've got a very good camera and quite a good zoom on the internet. And this work is not indiscriminate, it's really skillful. The problem when you're doing cross-hatching is if you try and do it yourself, you'll start to do it quite carefully. You know, 2 hours later, you accelerate and it gets scruffy. This is an immaculately executed illustration. And when you're talking about sketches, there are sketches and drawings and artworks, and then there are illustrations. And the idea of calling to an illustration, it is done with printing and reproduction in mind down the line. So this isn't a print or facsimile. This is a original source painting, and I think they would have used this to make a calendar, company calendar, or a poster for their depots around the world, or greeting card or letterhead, I don't know. So it's done by the company, and it's quite evocative of the time. If you handed me this and said, Robert, please date this, if I didn't have the signature and didn't have the name on it, you know those vehicles, the excavator with the bucket and the dumper truck, you know it's going to be 50 something. It's pretty easy to date it. So if this was a piece of furniture, it would be called a period piece of furniture. And the idea is, it's period if it is executed at the time the design is new. So this is modern art or contemporary art back in 1958. Having said that, these figures are borrowed. Some people will disagree with me. I can't help but think of those Russian statues of the workers with pickaxes and sickles and scythes, these beefy Russian bronzes you get. So you have elements of other things which the artist has drawn from. I think also this artist here is conscious that in the early 20th century there was quite a popular form of art called woodblocks, and the woodblocks were 2 colours, well, the colour of the paper and the colour of the ink, monochrome I suppose if you like, and because of the woodblocks were printing, rather like an engraver makes engraving in a different way painted as a painting, they use the blacks, they use the cross-hatching in a certain way to give depth and relief and tone and variety. So I don't know the scene here. I can't tell you where the scene is. I think that it is likely that the scene is Malta, almost certainly. And some of the people I've spoken to think it is Marsa Power Station. I think it's likely to be around the harbour, whether it's dug into the side of Corradino or Corradino or one of the other creeks, I don't know. But you have a large chunk of limestone, you have excavating, you have broken trees, broken masonry, you have men hauling oil, you have in the background perhaps an indication of Grand Harbour, you have perhaps an indication of fortifications, you have indications of parasol trees, you have indications of flat roof buildings in the manner of a Maltese building, you have a zigzag sky, and you have a stylised, not a collage, but you have a stylised, non-literal drawing, not a print. So you have to look at the desirability when it comes to valuing it. Now, I bought it in a sale room in Malta this week, and like all these Cremonas this year, they've all gone far beyond the established prices in the sale rooms, and it's rather the same in London with the Bankses and Hirsts and the Warhols and the Picasso prints and Picasso pottery. They have these sales. These are branded names, they're famous names, and people want to buy into the idea of owning them, and they want to invest in them, and they are going for really nearly always far beyond the top estimate. I think that as a visual item to look at, this is quite compact. You could say it's small if you wanted to. It's compact, it's busy, it's interesting, it's of the time, it's of Malta, And it's telling you really here that Wimpey, obviously an English firm, came to Malta with their stuff and they did their commercial activity when Malta was a possession of the Crown. And you have this curious thing where you're a Maltese artist living in a colonial country, doing some work for the colonial, not masters, that's not the right word to use, custodians, you could say, if you were being charitable. But you have to say, though that is unpalatable for a lot of the Maltese collectors, they don't want an English van on their picture of their country. But you have to realise that many Maltese are quite happy to have a Grand Master on their wall, not perhaps tuned into the fact that there was never a Grand Master of Malta. Of course, there were Maltese knights, there were Maltese soldiers, and there were Maltese bishops, but to the degree this is an alien insertion into Malta from somewhere else, you know, the whole of Valletta really is not Maltese in that sense. And I've noted that the Great Siege Memorial in Valletta is not depicting Maltese characters, which is depicting Northern European Aryan characters with the wrong armour, and the memorial opposite the law courts is built in Valletta, where, and of course, Valletta wasn't built when the Grand Siege occurred. And of course, the Grand Siege was in Burgu. So there is an identity crisis, really, if you're being picky. So I appreciate that it's an English Maltese scene, but in the greater sort of story of Malta, perhaps it could be forgiven. I don't know. I like it very much. The Wimpey is not the Wimpey of the hamburgers who don't have the E. It is Wimpey Construction who make, along with Taylor Woodrow, they make houses in Ibiza now, they make houses in Spain, they make houses in England. You can go on the internet and look up Taylor Woodrow, you can buy these English houses all over Europe still, so they're still going strong. Okay, barrels of oil. You don't see barrels of oil much anymore. It's all tanked and it's all tubed and tanked. In Malta, you'd see these on the beaches. They used to make them into bins. Used to set light to the bins at the end of the day until quite recently. So I like it very much. It's evocative of Malta. Okay, we're going to look at the condition. There was foxing on the margin. I'm glad that it is focused on the margin. There is not much at all on the paper of the drawing. I can actually see the areas of foxing here are on the inside of the glass. I'm not going to take it out of the frame. I want to sell it as it is. I want the next person to have the opportunity to clean it, go to town, have a new frame if they want. I would be suggesting to the next owner they don't change the frame, because when down the line, I suspect it is quite, it probably has been removed at some stage. It's masking tape, perhaps isn't the original masking tape, but I'm not going to disturb it. I think down the line, if you want to get the maximum value out of it, if you're going to sell it again, though at the moment that people don't want these frames and they will change them, I think that it will need its own frame if you want to maximise the selling price. And the day will come when you go into a sale room with these fellas and these Dingler Caruanas or Caruana Dinglers and these Apacs and things, and all of them nearly would have been stripped out of their original frames, and they'll be in modern frames. And of course, a modern frame has a lifespan until it itself becomes unfashionable. I would say 15 to 20 years. So the auctioneer will say, "My God, it's got its original frame." That's what you really want, and I will leave it. If I was selfish and I had a very, very big modern house in Teeny Point, all shiny, it wouldn't look right. I accept that. And you'd have it taken out, and you'd have a wider margin and a shinier frame, and it would be all clean, and it would be conserved and nicely papered up at the back. I can understand that, and I think for half the buyers that's probably what they will do, and that is for someone who wants to look at it and use it. But as a dealer, I want to preserve the opportunity for the next buyer to either do that or not do it. Okay, we've talked about Cremona, we've talked about what it is, price. Well, the market is the market, and the prices are stable. and climbing, and I feel that they are relatively good value. If you compare even this Cremona to even a secondary artist in England from the 20th century, some of the prices are really very high, and I think if you consider in Malta this is one of the foremost artists, I think there's a really long way to go on price on these names. I really do feel they haven't achieved their fullest potential. So we have at the moment in Malta, I have a lot of stock in Malta. I have 100 pictures plus in Malta. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them are ugly. I jest. And we have quite a lot of the good names. We have the names you would expect me to have. Gallia, many Gallias. We have Vella, sold some. We have Leah. We have a lot of Despacito. We have some other modern artists, the living artists, quite a lot of them, because they can be acquired really very cheaply. You can buy 20-year-old Maltese contemporary pictures for a third of what it would have cost to buy in the gallery first time around. So we have this coalesced collection of pictures. We've got a Kenneth Zamatabono over there, and then we have a lot of ordinary antique pictures and mirrors, after paintings to Titians and Murillos, and we have a lot of paintings which are not attributed and not signed as well, and so they're bought for the decorative value. And if you value your picture decoratively, you have a stable platform on which to make sure your value is preserved if you ever wish to exit and sell it. This value of this Cremona stuff exceeds its decorative value, so you have to calculate different things. Just before I go, I'll just mention signature. This Cremona signature usually is a sort of go faster, futuristic, stylized, long swish signature. On this occasion, it is a sort of Chinese layout, top to bottom, vertical signature, which is distinctive, and I quite like it. I think it fits quite well. So it's signed, and you need really to have these on these pictures, which exceed, where the value exceeds the decorative value. You really need to justify the excess in price, and you need signatures. I have seen in Malta the last 2 years some paintings with incorrect signatures, and if you take time and look at them carefully, they do stand out and you can detect them. I don't like to see signatures necessarily on the back. I don't like to see them necessarily on the frame. I don't necessarily like side letters from academics saying what it is. And I don't like the expression in catalogues attributed to, because it leaves room for doubt. And I think if you avoid those things, it is probably wise. I try to resist the temptation to buy pictures which are loosely attributed, though I will sometimes. So we have the picture, it's in Malta. I think it's a lovely thing to own. You can enjoy owning it, you can enjoy looking at it. You have your friends around, if they're artistic and in that way inclined, you can have a chat about the Cremona. And when you go into the museum and you see a Cremona, you can say, oh, I've got one of those as well. Really it's a real treat, really is a treat. There's an element of showing off, of course there is, but it's a nice thing to have. It's a nice thing to partake in this collecting. It's a really pleasurable pastime, doesn't do anyone any harm. It's not like going to the race course or going to the casino. I mean, you can lose more money at the casino than you can in the sale room, that's for sure. So thanks for looking. Bye-bye.